All right, we are live. Let's get all our Facebook groups in here so we can get the show on the road. And spinning wheels 1, 2, and 3. Welcome in, welcome in. It is Tuesday evening, the night that a lot of NFL news just seems to always occur, and it's time for an episode of Building the Broncos. I am Nick Kendell, and joined by, as always, on these Tuesday evening shows, Carl Dumler. Carl, how you doing? Have you been able to keep up with all of the news today? I feel like today is one of the lesser productive days for us, just with everything trickling in.
Yeah, I mean, you got what, 1,500 players getting cut from rosters today, and it's hard to keep up with all those names. I can imagine for NFL teams trying to figure out who they're going to put in waiver claims for, and we'll talk about that more as we go into the show. But it gets crazy, and I feel for these guys that lose their jobs in this moment and don't know what their future holds. And so, I mean, I think the more I've been a part of all of this, being connected to football and media and stuff like that, and you actually every once in a while get to talk to some of these guys, like, this isn't a fun day as much as it used to be. Like, I used to get excited of, oh, we're going to see the 53-man roster. Now I'm like, oh man, I like that guy. He seemed like a really good guy. I've heard good things about it, those kind of things. And but no, like I said, it's fun because it means NFL season is just right around the corner. And like I said, we're getting down to these 53-man rosters, getting to see how they form these teams. Sean Payton, his first roster he's putting together. What's this going to look like? And it's, like I said, it's just fun to see that part of it.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun to see that. And we got some people coming in here. We got Kevin Gray in the house saying, evening, Nick, Carl, and Scott. Interesting day. Big Mile High salute. Good to see you, Kevin. We got Mike S. in the house, too, saying, what's up, Carl, Nick, and Scott, and Dylan in Broncos country? Good to see you. David says, what did we get or lose on the trade with the Lutz kicker? Carl, can you break the news on the break the news, but what happened with the trade for the Broncos here with bringing in Will Lutz?
Yeah, so Broncos have traded a conditional 7th-round pick. We don't know exactly what the conditions are at this point. Is it just a straight 7th if he makes the week 1 roster? Does he have to play so many games? Does it move up to like a 6th-round pick if he makes a Pro Bowl or something like that? We don't know exactly all the details of it, but right now it's a conditional 7th, and I think it's the Broncos 7th-round pick. They have another one from the Kenny Young trade that they made a while ago. So it's not that one. It's not the Rams one, which I think is probably a good thing. I think the Broncos will be better than the Rams this year.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty good call on that one. We'll see what the news is on that trade, but let's get it rolling here. And Carl, let me know if my internet is a little slow or if I'm jipping up a little bit. You're jipping up on my screen, but it could just be something going on with the computer. So let me know whatever's going on there. We got, I want to say hello to everybody coming in here, but we got to get to our supers, of course. Troy Bauer coming in saying, hey guys, cannot join, but wanted to show support. We have now cut more than we need for the 3 going on IR. So we must have a pickup in mind. Timmy Horn. Is that true? I thought we were exactly at 53 right now. I don't know if we are 1 over or not. These news happened just before we're going on, so I don't have the exact math in front of me, but I thought it came out to exactly 53 when I counted everybody.
Yeah, I think it is 53. It wouldn't surprise me if you see a couple more moves because Sean Payton, I think he made it pretty clear he's not completely satisfied with this 53-man roster. Like, yes, he's going to move those 3 guys to IR, and he's going to bring back 3 of these guys that they cut today. But I think you could see a couple more moves where they're going, yeah, this would be an upgrade over this guy. Justin Strnad at that 4th linebacker spot. I could see possibly a move there. Wide receiver room. They just cut both Little Jordan Humphrey and Callaway, and I don't think either of them are guaranteed to come back. Little Jordan Humphrey had a pretty good preseason game number 3, but Callaway's done pretty much nothing of newsworthy work on the field from what I've seen. And so, yeah, I could see the Broncos looking at some of these wide receivers that have been cut and say, hey, this guy's done at least a little something. We can bring him in, or you can add to special teams, whatever it may be. So I do expect a couple more cuts.
Yeah. Yeah, there'll be moves. I mean, you talked about Sean Payton even said it in the press conference here, saying that if he was fully satisfied with where the roster's at and how everything's looking, they would be at 6. He'd be home by 6, but instead they're going to be back home by about 2 So hopefully that is not too late of a night there for our guy Sean Payton. But yeah, no, we have. Thank you so much, Troy, for the super chat here. We really do appreciate you. David Meckelrath is in the house as well, saying good evening, Broncos country. Nick, Carl, and Dylan, and Deacon Scott. 12-5, MHH for life. Buckham and Denver Broncos for life. Also, shout out to you, Papa Bear. I know that you just lost your brother this week, so hopefully, condolences to you from the MHH family. That can never be easy. And I knew Rick as well on the socials, so gonna miss him posting and loving for the Broncos as well. So rest in peace, Rick. Tom coming in saying, even if Jerry is not out long, we need a wide receiver. Yeah, well, let's talk about the wide receiver room, Carl. So we have the breakdown happening here. What's going on with the Broncos wide receiver room now that we are at, I believe, 53 men?
Yeah, so we're down to 4 wide receivers, which is just, I mean, that's crazy talk. We've had seasons where we had like 8 guys on the initial roster. And so right now it is Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Brandon Johnson, and Marvin Mims. And so obviously they're not going to go into the season that way. I think they just felt at least good about Callaway and Little Jordan Humphrey being able to make it back onto their roster if they cut him at this point. That's the main thing. I know some of these veterans saw a few people on Twitter going, Mike Purcell, you just redid his contract. Why would you be cutting him at this point? And the reason is just because he's a veteran. Like he's not going to go anywhere else. Maybe a team sneaks in and says, hey, we'll offer you another $1 million, but that doesn't usually happen. Usually you kind of already have a deal under the table done with these players saying, hey, we're cutting you today. 24 hours from now, you're brought back. Don't worry about it. Like you are on this roster. Right. And so, like I said, for wide receiver, I think both those guys, you don't have to worry about them getting snagged by another team at this point.
Yeah. So yeah, Broncos definitely, if Jerry Jeudy misses time, I mean, if he doesn't miss time, I'm expecting them to look for more wide receivers. The fact that they only have 4 on the roster right now makes me think that you're going to see some of these defensive backs specifically head to the short-term IR and then trot it out, and we'll see what goes from there. But this is not the final roster without a doubt. The next 48 hours, we will have a lot of turnover, no doubt on this. Thank you so much for the super chat there, Tom. We appreciate you coming in and supporting the show. So other big news, you mentioned it there, the final roster cuts that we've seen here today. We had Quinn Bailey, offensive lineman, Mike Purcell, defensive tackle, Fabian Moreau, cornerback, and Lil Jordan Humphrey released, as well as Marquez Callaway waived. Those were all reported by Mike Kliss. And then you also had Kliss mentioned that on the 53-man roster, Kwan Williams, cornerback, PJ Locke, safety, and Alex Palczewski are 3 candidates to go on the short-term IR. We had George Payton mentioned specifically on that short-term IR.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, those 3 guys, you want to be able to keep them on your roster for the future. I think some of the other moves, again, you kept some of these young guys because you don't want to possibly end up on another team. Forsyth for the center position. If you view him as your possible future center, then you don't want to even take the chance that he's going to go somewhere else at this point. I'm sure that there were a few teams that had interest in him in the draft and didn't think he'd be there in the 7th round where the Broncos got him. JL Skinner's another one. Like if we were taking the straight 53 best players, I don't think JL Skinner makes this roster. I don't think Forsyth makes this roster, but you believe in these guys for your future. And so you're willing to put them in here on the back end of your roster and hope that they can develop and that you don't have to rely on them other than maybe some special teams.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense there for the Broncos at that spot. But wide receiver, I guess I was a little bit surprised to see them only have 4. We'll see what happens with Little Jordan Humphrey. I mean, I thought he played well enough after the injury, but I don't know. We'll see. I think the Broncos, from what I've heard and from how the roster is set up, very much a team that is going to be looking for help at wide receiver. And George Payton even mentioned it. They're very heavy at defensive back right now. Probably will not be the exact case in the next 48 hours. We'll see a lot of those guys that were just released in that last press release there, potentially coming back. Somebody like Mark Purcell, Quinn Bailey as well, who I thought had a pretty good preseason, and another guy as well in that group, another 3-back, maybe somebody else. I mean, it's probably going to be somebody brought in waivers. Broncos do have that 5th spot in the waiver wire, looking at linebackers for special teams, maybe to replace Strenad, looking at potentially tight ends and wide receivers. So we'll see what happens. However, I will say, did you listen to, I'm sure a lot of you guys listened to George Payton and Sean Payton as well. And they both, I think both of them talked about how much they liked Nate Atkins. I think George Payton even not let it slip, but shared a tidbit of information that they were debating on taking Atkins there with one of their last picks. So it could have been Atkins there instead of Alex Forsyth. They still get him as an undrafted free agent. Sounds like they really like that guy. So excited to see what he will do this year, what the role is like. I mean, we haven't seen Manhurts at all. Maybe Atkins is your tight end 3 entering the year, and I think you're going to get a lot of usage from him if there is any sort of injury at the tight end spot.
Yeah, and we can come back to that tight end spot because I know some people are going to have some questions about Alberto and why he didn't make this roster. Before that, I wanted to get to Naj here with the 1999 super chat coming in here orange for us for the Broncos. Thank you, Naj, saying, sorry to go off topic, but I saw this Lombardi report about Wilson being on a short leash. How soon before he's benched? Blah, blah, blah. National media, again, skewering Wilson. Who inside the Broncos organization is saying this stuff? I don't know if it's actually coming from the organization. I think this is just media realizing this is an easy story. Mm-hmm. You know, Wilson struggled last year. There was lots of stories coming out of the building that he and teammates didn't get along very well. You know, there's just a lot of bad. You know, when everything is going bad, that's what comes out of the building. And like I said, it's just an easy target. Every time you talk about Russell Wilson, you just doubled your audience just by bringing up this kind of topic. And so, yeah, I don't think it's actually coming out of the organization. You know, maybe you got some people from last year's staff that's maybe trying to get this stuff out there, you know, because angry with what Sean Payton said earlier this offseason, talking about how bad they were as a staff. And so let's get in our last little bit of shots to, you know, just take a few things out. And, you know, there's just so much of this stuff just comes from really random places. Like I said, it doesn't always just come from the organization. So I think Lombardi, he's one that he does a lot of, what's the word I want to say? Over exaggerating things. Mm-hmm. He's kind of known to just really fluff these things up. You know, maybe somebody said, hey, we've got some questions if he's going to be our long-term starter. And all of a sudden it's, oh, he might get benched pretty soon. You know, that's kind of the way that he goes on a lot of his stories. So I don't pay a whole lot of attention when he brings big stories.
And you meant Lombardi as in the general Denver media, not the offensive coordinator.
Right. Is it Michael Lombardi?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's Vic and Lombardi and Michael Lombardi. But yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't care too much about it. They're going to hate until he proves that they can play. I mean, you have Kyle Brandt every other Good Morning Football on NFL Network, you know, talking crap. I don't know. Well, until the Broncos play better, it's going to continue. So hopefully it'll get better here soon. Facebook user coming in saying, aloha, gents. Michaela Israel, good to see you. Albert Knopper's in the house too, saying good evening. Greg Smith, good to see you, Greg. I see Jan Fitz is in here. Hope you're doing well, Jan. Always appreciate you coming in. Ryan Slavic in the house. Doug Tessier saying Lutz is all healed up now. He should be fine, and he has never had the yips. He was not great last year, so we'll see how that goes, but hopefully it'll be better. Also, I saw Tom came in with a super, but also said hello, so good to see you. William Cantalano's in the house. Good to see you. Mike S., of course. Dylan Von Ark saying, sup, Broncos country. Make sure you guys hit the like button on the way in, share on all platforms, and subscribe if you haven't already. And you talked about it a little bit earlier, Carl. I want to get it back around to it. So I guess besides the fascinating punter or kicker trade that the Broncos had, bringing in Will Lutz, and loved hearing from Sean Payton say they had some information on the inside about how Lutz was doing. I don't know if that was the agent or Lutz texting his former coaches, but I digress. I don't know what's going on there, but Sean Payton's not dumb. He's not giving up anything that would get them in trouble, I believe at least. But Will Lutz trade, that's probably the biggest thing. But Alberto Cuebanam, Broncos fan favorite, a lot of potential, you know, see a big guy that's caught a lot of touchdowns at Missouri as a redshirt sophomore, ran fast in a straight line at Missouri, and then started to come on pretty well over the last 2 weeks of training camp, especially that week 3 game against backups, but still played well. And the first news is he is outright waived. Broncos aren't getting anything for him. What were your first thoughts there when you heard that Alberto Cuebanam was going to be waived after the pretty strong preseason performance we saw from him?
It really didn't bother me. I know a lot of other people
Yeah.
after that last game were like, he has to make this roster. Like that's just how can you cut a guy that just dominated in the way that he did?
Mhm.
And my thought is, how can you keep a guy that it took until the very final 2 weeks of his final year of his contract to show something? We've had 3 years of nothing from him.
Mhm.
We've had different coaching staffs. What is he at? He's had now this is his third coaching staff, and each of them have started off like putting him on the field, and the more that he was on the field, the less they wanted him there. And like as the season progressed, his
Yeah.
snaps went down. I know he got a little bit there the last few games of this last season, got a little bit of run. But like I said, he's not been a trusted guy. He doesn't bring anything special teams wise for you. And if you're keeping 4 tight ends, your 4 tight end needs to be a special teams guy. And I think to me, he's mostly just pure receiver. I know he's improved as a blocker,
Mhm.
but he's improved from being one of the worst blocking tight ends in football. We got to keep that in perspective. He went from bottom tier to the next tier up. It still wasn't great. I think many people, if they looked, Mark Schlereth put out a video earlier today of the McLaughlin touchdown run on the goal line. I think it was McLaughlin.
I'm sure
And
it was. If it was a touchdown run, it was McLaughlin, right?
yeah, probably. But all of a sudden you just see Albert Okwuegbunam like go flying across the screen because he lost all leverage.
Yeah.
And I think he got pushed like 4 or 5 yards. He actually got pushed beyond the play, and the defender missed that the ball carrier was right next to him. And like I said, it was a bad play. And it's those kind of things. Can you trust him in those big moments in a real game that matters to go make the play? Like him missing that block in a real game probably ends in that not being a touchdown. So he could be the difference
Yeah.
between getting 7 points and getting 3 points because he can't handle his block. And so, like I said, I wouldn't have minded if he made the roster. Like I get it. He still has some potential. Like I said, he showed well athletically, but for the most part, he has just never lived up to the hype of what you thought he could bring to the field. And I wish him well with the Eagles. I think he could probably find some success because they got a lot of weapons that you can put him in a lot of one-on-one situations where he can win his matchup.
Yeah.
And I just think for the Broncos right now, Nate Atkins has been consistent throughout the entire training camp and consistent in the games. Like he's not all world. He's not going to go get 1,000-yard receiving season, but he's a good all-around player. He offers you at least some backup ability at the fullback position as well, just in case you get a Burton that gets hurt. Those kind of things. Again, all of this kind of adds up just to why you're willing to keep Atkins, who's been a more consistent guy, over the more gifted player.
Yeah. Yeah, and you didn't even mention my big thing here is the special teams. At least I don't think you mentioned. I mean, Albert Okwuegbunam, he improved as a blocker. We saw that, but he did not really contribute much as a core 4 player. Punt return, kick return, punt coverage, kick coverage. Just not an area of his game. And if you are a tight end 3, tight end 4, you better damn well be a special teams player. And Atkins brings that. I think both George and Sean Payton mentioned that as a big contribution for him. So yeah, Atkins make it. Albert Okwuegbunam was out. I was pretty bummed when the Broncos couldn't get any value from him because he is still talented, and I could imagine a team that wants to run more passing concepts with their tight ends rather than blocking. Looking for somebody that could fit that roster. And happy to see the Eagles with their 31st ranking on the waiver wire decide to give the Broncos a 6th round pick for Albert Okwuegbunam in a 7th. I think that's if it's not the exact same trade, it's damn near identical to the one that we saw last year with Malik Reed, where the Broncos flipped that pick. But that 6th round pick is worth, 2/7. So you did increase your value there. If you need to get more picks next year because Sean Payton continues to, burn them, then you can flip that 6 and get a couple guys. Or you can, how the Broncos got Adam Troutman this year. They traded that 5th and ended up getting Troutman. So you get a little bit more flexibility, capital going forward as well. And the number of picks doesn't change, but the value of picks, your overall capital did increase there for a player that didn't seem like they really wanted him that much here still, and somebody that only had 1 year of control left. So not shocking. I wish him the best. He's going to a heck of a team out there as well. Also, there's no concern about who's tight end 1 out there because Dallas Goedert might be the most underrated tight end in all of football, and I say that as an Iowa fan. So that must mean something because I've seen good tight ends. Didn't say Hawkinson's the most underrated or something, but yeah, it's Bush and Alberto the best. Probably the biggest surprise move today, or the one that generated the most concern from Broncos country. But I'm glad they were able to get some value from him in the end. Perry West coming in $20 saying, is there a chance the Broncos look at Tyler Johnson, wide receiver out of Tampa Bay? He's been like on and off Tampa Bay for a few years now, right? From Minnesota, 6th-round pick. He had a pretty good career at Minnesota. He's another one where it's like he's a solid slot player, but if you're talking about wide receiver 5, 6, special teams, I just don't think he's a very dynamic special teams player.
Yeah, he's been on 5 NFL rosters already in his NFL career. Yep. Started with the Bucks.
So he's back at the Bucks, or he was at the Bucks.
So he signed with the Rams actually. I saw.
Okay.
So May 30th, he signed with the Rams. Just got cut. Was with the Raiders, Bucks second time, Houston Texans at one point. And so I mean, I liked him coming out of college. Mm-hmm. I thought he could be at least a little something. Maybe a good number 3 wide receiver for an NFL team. He just hasn't quite lived up to that. But, again, we're talking end of roster kind of guys. You're trying to find somebody that can help on special teams. I'm not sure that that's exactly his forte, which is why he's struggled to stay on NFL rosters. And I would probably lean away from this. Like I said, I'm looking for special teams guys. Mm-hmm. I think you've got your receiving options. I think Brandon Johnson is enough as a receiver. Marvin Mims, again, I think he's going to be a lot more than people think this year. And Jerry Jeudy is going to come back at some point. Courtland Sutton, obviously, your number 1. And so, again, you're looking for that 5th guy. Can he be a gunner for you? Maybe kickoff specialist if you need that, kind of a backup to all of your return spots. And so those are the kind of wide receivers that I'm looking for right now.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Those are guys going to matter, and it really matters with guys like Perry West coming in and giving us $20 like that. Very generous of you, Perry. We appreciate that. The $20. Naj as well coming in. Thank you so much. It really does help. We got Tom coming back in saying Robbie Chosen, formerly known as Robbie Anderson, wide receiver, and defensive tackle Rashard Lawrence from Arizona would be the first 2 people I look at, followed by wide receiver Schwartz. Like all 3 for this team. I'm going to stay away from Robbie Chosen because he has had some issues on the sidelines here and there. And again, I don't know how much special teams he's bringing right now, but Rashard Lawrence is an interesting one. I figured once the Broncos worked out Mike Purcell's contract that he would be on the 53. He was released, but he was released last year and brought back. So we'll see what happens with him. But Lawrence maybe changes things because he was the nose tackle for Vance Joseph in Arizona last year. Anthony Schwartz, former 2nd-round pick, track star from Auburn, hasn't translated to the NFL just yet, but big, fast, and strong does translate. And if you're looking for like a kick returner or something, I think he'd be probably pretty good there. Tremont Smith is still on this team. Am I incorrect there, Carl, as you take a cough? He's still on the team, so he's the kick returner right now. They might be stuck with him. I saw a comment earlier about that. Yeah, and we got Lawrence saying stars coming in here. We're running without Scott right now. I thought he'd be in here by now, but he is not yet. So we are going blind on the Facebook stars. But once he comes back in, we will be hopefully catching up on those Facebook stars here. But that's where we're at. So any thoughts on the I want to ask you any surprises today with this roster so far. So there's a few guys that we have not talked about too much making the team that did sneak through.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Forsythe, I'm torn on him because I really liked him coming out of college. And I really do think that he could be a part of the Broncos' future at the center position. But the fact that they never bumped him up just to see what he could do, with the 2nd string guys compared to being always on the 3rd string. I wish that we would have got that kind of opportunity. So I think you're taking a lot of risk by keeping him around. I'm not sure that he would have been claimed by anybody. Couple others that maybe stick out. I'm trying to see. I'm looking at the list here. Tremont Smith, I know, like I said, he's got the big contract, making $2.5 million to be your kick returner. I really hate that.
Yeah.
Especially with the new rules on the kick returns, where you can fair catch at any place and it started at the 25-yard line. So I think you've really devalued that kick returner position. I could understand if he was the kick returner and punt returner,
Mhm.
But when he's the kick returner, that's going to be maybe what, 30 returns this year, possibly, for your kick
If
returner or
that.
something like that. So I mean, that's pretty much, he's on the roster for 30 plays, and he's going to have to
Mhm.
be one of your active guys every single week to come in there and maybe do something. And I don't think he brings that much as a returner compared to even, I'm trying to think of some other guys. I mean, you could put McLaughlin back there.
Yeah.
He had a pretty good return in the preseason, and you don't have to worry as much about his hands, because if he drops it, he's got a little bit of time to kind of get back up to it. But like I said, I hate using that for such a very limited scope on the roster when you have so few spots available for active on NFL days.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. It is a bummer, and the expert ninja coming in mentioning the issues there with Tremont Smith getting that roster spot, but a bit of a bummer there. Michaela Israel in the house, good to see you, Michaela. Greg asking if we like the Alberto trade. We kind of got through that, so that's good. And we got Michael Ronquillo coming in saying, "Good evening, Nick and Carl. I'm building the Broncos. Go Broncos and Buckham. I'm doing my best. It doesn't sound like Scott is going to be joining us today. So any of the supers, I'm hopefully going to be getting to them. If you guys are getting them in here, I see them coming in from Michael Ronquillo there, giving us the hello, what's up. I also see Lawrence Rivera coming in saying more stars for my last comment as well. Lawrence, I'm not sure if I can find that one right here, doing both things here and hoping my computer doesn't give up on me. But yeah, here we go. I can't believe we got rid of Alberto. Kid was literally a wide receiver his whole life, and even in college. In his height and weight, he could have been a big wide receiver that they actually needed. This was George Payton failure all around from getting rid of Fant. I don't think it's. Let's let history judge that one. Let's see what Alberto Cuebanam does. If he goes on to be a Pro Bowl or get a big second contract, then we can mention that. But this isn't George Payton calling the shot here. I believe, at least this is Sean Payton. This is a team that wants their tight ends to be probably a little bit more block oriented, and it came down to a decision of. I really do think it came down to a decision of Alberto Cuebanam versus Greg Dulcich for that type of fit on the roster. And with Dulcich's youth, Dulcich's years of control, they keep Dulcich instead of Alberto. So, it is what it is. Sometimes you get unfortunate breaks. I hope Alberto Cuebanam goes on to have success, and we'll see how it plays out as time goes on.
How many great tight ends do you think there are in the NFL right now?
Great tight ends? George Kittle and Travis Kelce are probably the only truly great tight ends right now. I think everybody else is good or very good. Other than that, though, not many.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked it up right yet, and maybe somebody in the chat can look it up, but I'd be interested just to see how many tight ends finished with more than 500 yards receiving last year. I don't think it's probably going to be more than maybe 8 or 9 guys in the NFL. Yeah. It just, like I said, there's like that top tier guys, and then it really kind of bunches together a lot of other people. If you do fantasy football, you kind of know this. Like, if you don't get Travis Kelce or George Kittle, usually you're waiting on your tight end position. I saw somebody say that the Ravens tight end, Mark Andrews, again, he's not been healthy. So that's kind of played a little bit of. Go ahead.
And he hasn't been as totally elite as George Kittle has. So George Kittle hasn't been healthy either, but when George Kittle's out there, it's different than even what Mark Andrews does, especially when you include the blocking. And Lawrence, more stars there. Thank you so much, Lawrence. We are doing what we can, and we really do appreciate the support. Yeah, Mark Andrews is great as well. Phil McGoffin gave stars also. Greg, look at you looking out. Phil is always a real one. I can't believe we missed Phil, if at all. So appreciate you coming in, Phil. Wherever that is. I'll let Carl look for that here in a second while I answer this next one here from Timmy Shields, $5, rocking the Color Rush jersey there, it looks like, and holding a newborn baby. So congrats to you, Timmy. I'm not sure how old that picture is, but father-to-be right here. So congrats to you, and that's awesome, man. Good picture. It says, good evening, Nick, Carl, and Scott. Go Broncos, and super excited for the direction of the team. That's okay. We'll come back to you, Timmy. He says it's going to be a playoff team too. We'll see, Timmy. I'm really hoping that we have a playoff team here for the Broncos. But right now, before anything else, let's just start 1-0 and beat the Raiders, because, God, the Raiders have sucked so much, and how they keep beating the Broncos, it's just not right. So 1-0, and then we can go from there. Phil McLaughlin coming in saying, I'm just happy He had a great finish and showed well in practice, talking about Alberto Cuevana. He says at least he'll have a great opportunity on another team now, and a team that's done pretty darn well with tight ends. Obviously, you guys know Zach Ertz was good there for a bit. Then they drafted Dallas Goedert, and he's become a really, really good tight end. So yeah, it's an interesting one. He says good evening as well. Good to see you, Phil. Thank you so much. Any surprises? I was pretty surprised that they kept as many defensive backs as they did. I heard that they were keeping Tremont Smith because of contract stuff, but that's a little bit of a bummer. Both Delaren Turner-Yell and J.L. Skinner, that's a little bit surprising to me. And also Thomas Incoom making it. He didn't really – I liked him coming out of Central Michigan. I think he was their highest paid undrafted free agent that they brought in. There's a lot of competition for him. He didn't really pop for me in the preseason games, but I guess that he is pretty good in the special teams. Coaches liked him there in that third phase of the game. So Thomas Incoom, that's probably my other big surprise on this roster.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Incoom, I was hoping that they would keep him just because I do see the potential, and you can never have enough edge rushers on your team. You got a couple guys ahead of Incoom that are injury prone. Frank Clark has missed a lot of time this offseason. Obviously, you got Baron Browning that's on the sideline right now, going on the PUP. You got Gregory, who hasn't completed an entire season before. Benito, I think he was kind of dinged up a lot last year and kind of got dinged up right here at the end of the training camp. So I get it of keeping Incoom just because you kind of wonder if those guys are going to stay healthy for you. But I think he's probably going to be one of your first game day scratches, would be my guess at this point.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I see Tim Durr saying, did we keep Callaway? Broncos did not keep Callaway. He was released, not waived, I believe. I don't want to have too many tabs open because I think the internet's not loving me right now. But Carl, you'd let me know if I was having issues, right? You guys in the chat would too. So hopefully we're doing okay out there. And Zach Powers comes in and says, current roster tells me two down linemen, two outside linebackers, two inside linebackers, and 5 defensive backs. We may end up with a worse run defense if we're not careful. Yeah, I mean, you have DJ Jones is pretty good there, and this is far from the last iteration of what this Broncos team is going to look like right now. So I'm not too worried about that right now, especially because I think they're going to bring back another interior defensive lineman at some point, whether it be Purcell, could be Rashard Lawrence, who was just released from Arizona, could be Lancaster out there, but I'm not overly worried right now by the run defense. That said, once guys start dropping, if they start dropping, then we could have some issues there because I don't love the depth of the spine of the defense.
Yeah, I mean, Josie Jewell has always been good against the run. Alex Singleton's been good against the run. Like I said, DJ Jones, even Allen, I think when he was signed and we were trying to have that argument back and forth of whether they should have kept their own guy or gone with Allen, a lot of what we pointed towards was that Allen was very good against the run. Maybe he didn't bring quite as much as the pass rusher, but against the run, he was very strong. So I think you got some decent guys. And then the other big thing is just the change in scheme. I think Vance Joseph has always been big on, I want to stop the run. Like, this is where we start our defense. Stop the run, and then we'll worry about the pass. And, I mean, we can argue whether that's a good philosophy or not, especially in today's NFL, because he has shown that he has some struggles against really good quarterbacks because they just destroy that. They're like, okay, yeah, you want to play cover 1, cover 3 on the back end? We'll make this easy. I can pick that apart all day long. You want to bring the blitz against me? Boom, I'll hit that all day long. So again, we can argue that all day long, but I keep saying that. But still, like I said, he does have an emphasis towards stopping the run. I think it'll be better than it was last year.
Yeah, I agree with you there. We'll see how it plays out, but thank you for the comment, Zach. We got Cody W coming in $5 super over on YouTube saying no more Darren Waller to play against 2 times a year. Speaking of tight end, thank God for that. Another Raiders mistake letting him go. Yeah, he went to the Giants, right? The New York Football Giants out there. So I'm glad he's in the NFC as well. There's a lot of solid tight ends out there, but not a lot of truly difference makers. And I mean, Travis Kelce is in a world of its own. It's like, imagine you are the Denver Nuggets, or I don't know, I'm not an NBA guy really, but like imagine, we can't stop small forwards. Oh man, but like you play half your games against LeBron James. Like no wonder you can't stop small forwards when that's your sample size there. It feels like that with Travis Kelce as well, because he's doing that to everybody out there in the NFL. It doesn't matter really what you're doing. He's going to get his. So hopefully the Broncos can be a little bit better against tight ends, but I think it's been overstated how poor they've been there since VJ left. They were pretty bad with Joe Woods and Vance Joseph against tight ends. I will admit that one. But we'll see how they play out this year. Thank you, Cody, for the comment there. We also got Timmy Shields coming back in saying that's my grandson and a future Broncos fan. A Broncos fan now, Timmy Shields. And also says congrats on the baby, Nick. Baby's late January, so a playoff baby, hopefully. But that's coming away. And Nick is not a daddy yet. Nick is soon to be. Wife is on the nest, as they like to say. So some more news coming in here from the Broncos. A lot of the guys that they did release here on that last iteration. Lil Jordan Humphrey. This is credit to Chris Thomason over at the Denver Gazette. He says that the Broncos are going to bring back Lil Jordan Humphrey on the practice squad. He will sign there tomorrow as a vested veteran, so doesn't have to pass through waivers. So that's going to be good. He can be brought up. Also, the Broncos need wide receivers. They can do that 3 times before then they have to make a decision with what his roster will be. And also, he reports that sources have said that tackle Quinn Bailey will be on the Broncos 53-man roster for week 1. So he's one of the vested players they released that is going to be back. Had a good camp. So expect him to be signed back. That means that no matter what, there'll be at least one player put on the short-term IR if they already know that Quinn Bailey is going to be back.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I saw somebody said, Carl, we can't have 53 edge rushers. Okay. Might be a little bit of an exaggeration. I always think of, what was that special teams coach for the Broncos that was like, if we had 22 Janoviches.
22 Janos.
We'd be good. Yeah. And so, yeah, maybe a little bit of an exaggeration, but I do like having more edge rushers than you need. If anything, we saw today, there's a couple trades of edge rushers. Teams had a little bit of abundance and you can get some decent value for those players. I would say when we're looking at like value of trades, edge rushers probably top 3. You got quarterback, maybe left tackle, edge.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that's probably how that goes. So like I said, if you got an abundance, we've seen in the past, like Malik Reed was a great trade for the Broncos. He just got cut by the Dolphins, I think. And so if you got that possibility, and you're always trying to look for that next guy, I've said it before on the show. I love how the Ravens do their system. Like they draft guys in those mid-round picks about every 2 years for the edge position. And then they give them about 2 years to kind of develop and become those next starters. And they let those other guys walk. And then they get like 3rd-round comp picks for those guys and then use them to restock the whole position all over again. And it's just, like I said, it's just a perfect system if you can get it set up right. Now, It doesn't work every time. And the Broncos, I think, have done pretty well of finding good edge talent, even as undrafted guys. There's been a couple of them that they found that have actually been decent contributors. Shaq Barrett went on and got himself a huge contract with the Bucs and won himself a Super Bowl. So again, if Nkum, I'm glad that they kept him. I haven't seen it yet of him like really just taking over games, but I still think that the potential's there.
Yeah. Yeah, they have potential and they need edge rushers, and the position will probably change a good bit next season. I mean, Frank Clark will be gone. Randy Gregory has a big contract decision, so we'll see what happens with edges, and it's definitely, in my book, the second most valuable position on the football field, well behind quarterback, but the second most valuable. Over on Twitch, we got Papa Savi coming in, Papa Savi 21, saying the Will Lutz decision. Yes, the Broncos trade for a kicker today, one of 2 teams to trade for a kicker. We also had Nick Folk going from the Patriots to the Titans. So that's another move there. But the Broncos bring in Will Lutz. He's had experience with Sean Payton, and the Broncos brought him in. So the saintsification of the Denver Broncos continues, and we'll see if that even goes further as potential guys like, was it Smith, the wide receiver from New Orleans? Keep an eye on him. I'm sure there's some other New Orleans players that potentially could be out there. Heck, maybe Bradley Roby is coming back to Denver at some point. Broncos are maybe having some questions about the health of the cornerback room with Kwan Williams and Riley Moss dealing with injury right now, and potentially both heading towards the short-term IR. So looking at the roster right now, Carl, besides wide receiver, what is the areas that you're looking at if you were Sean Payton, what are the positions that you think the Broncos need to utilize their 5th overall slot in the waiver wire?
I guess I'd still be looking at cornerback.
Okay.
Like you said, with a couple guys going on to IR, I mean, it's a pretty big position. Inside defensive line, like Henningsen, I like him. Garcia, I think he has potential to be something moving forward of a nice rotation player, but I don't really trust either of those guys to be like a consistent part of the rotation right now. So if you can find a little bit better upgrade on the back end of that defensive line, we talked about that a little bit earlier of some worry about the run game because, past Allen and DJ Jones, the rest of those guys, you have a lot of question marks for that defensive line. So definitely be looking hard at that position. I think you can find a couple guys that have probably hit the market. Defensive line, it's not hard to find like good run stoppers. Those kind of come in abundance into the NFL.
Yeah.
It's hard to find the guys that can do everything. Either they're decent at pass rush or they're decent against the run. And usually you got a lot more run stoppers than you do pass rushers because those guys still get paid. Even edge, I'd still kind of think about it. I know Nkum, I just said I'd like to see his potential, but I'd still like to give him a year. If you can get him through this first wave of all these waiver wire moves, sometimes if you wait a week, then all of a sudden you could put him on there and maybe find a guy. But again, that's kind of a hard position to find. Finding an upgrade over Sternad, wouldn't mind that one bit. I think he's done pretty well for being a special teams guy. And that's what you like out of your 4th linebacker spot. So I don't mind if he's your 4th guy. But again, if you can find somebody that offers a little bit more upside in case there's a couple injuries or anything like that, I'd definitely look at that. What about you?
Yeah. I am looking at Joey Richards, friend of the show. Joey, good to see you. He says, keep up the great work, guys. Thank you so much, Joey. We appreciate you. Joey does great work covering the Broncos. Make sure you guys are following him on Twitter. Good guy as well. So always appreciate hearing from Joey and seeing his analysis. I'm a competitor, right, for the sports streaming writing. That's, I don't know. I'm just here to have fun. And
Thank you,
appreciate
Joey. Good to see
Joey's
you.
good guy. So shout out to Joey. Woofy Mellet coming in here too, $10 saying, been listening from the beginning. First loan work. Thank you for all the hard work you guys do and the wealth of info that you bring. Must be talking to you there, Carl. I don't know about me. Work lurking, MHH, Denver Broncos for life. Thankful and Buckham. Thank you so much, Woofy, for the $10. That is really, really generous. And all you guys, you guys have been super generous today. Carl and I really do appreciate that. This is all the hashtag Nick's Babies Diaper Fund, not Nick's Diaper Fund. That's for, 40 years from now or whatever. But that's appreciate that so much. Wolfie coming in here. As far as what I'm looking at with the waiver wire and potentially even trade market still or just free agents in general, wide receiver just has to be number one for me. They just don't have enough proven guys. And even when Jerry Jeudy comes back, and I don't want to be this guy, but I am always going to be skeptical until I see it. It's a hamstring. It's a moderate hamstring. And it was just 2 years ago. Now it's different player, different training staff in here now. I get it. But just 2 years ago, it was Michael Ojemudia suffered a hamstring. And then it was like, oh, he'll probably be ready week 3. Oh, yeah, week 8. Oh, now it's like the last week of the season. And we finally see him out there. Like those hamstrings, you never know. You got to take them day by day. So I'd rather them I want them to be aggressive with wide receiver. I like the flashes we saw from Mims, good ball tracking, deep ball. I think Brandon Johnson's got a role in this league for a long time to come. I mean, he belongs, but I want to see them bring in another wide receiver out there just to add some talent to the pool and give them a little bit of depth. Cause I don't love what I'm seeing right now at a position. And you mentioned earlier, what did you say? Left tackle, the most valuable or one of the most valuable positions. I think in today's NFL, I would argue that a elite wide receiver, not that Broncos can get one, but an elite wide receiver is right up there, if not more valuable. I mean, don't the top wide receivers get paid more than the top tackles these days even? So it's a spot for concern for me with this Broncos team. And also, I mean, Cortland Sutton, I mean, a lot of hype this offseason and talk, but talk is cheap, right? Is he one of those guys that you can funnel the ball through no matter what? Or is he one that, if everything's working well, he can be part of a system? I don't know if he is the system as a wide receiver. So I am a little concerned. That's the one that I'm probably the single most aggressive on right now for the Broncos moving towards week 1.
Yeah, and I got a question about one more position for you, but I want to get to Paul here. Thank you, Paul. It's always great to see you in here. one of our original guys, just always paying attention to our shows. So Nick and Carl, wide receiver, help please. Hashtag congrats, Nick. Paul, again, good to see you. Thank you for the super chat. And yeah, of course, congrats to you, Nick, on the baby, and for you and your wife. I can't wait to meet the little one whenever they come, and hopefully it's celebrating a Super Bowl victory in their first couple weeks of life. And so anyway, other position I wanted to ask you about. Broncos did decide to only keep 2 quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
One, do you agree with that decision of letting DiNucci go? And 2, there are a lot of quarterbacks that have hit the market. Bailey Zappi had some starts last year. Colt McCoy is another one that's been a very long veteran in the league. You got Cardinals. I'm glad we're not covering the Cardinals this year.
I mean it'd be fun NFL draft talk.
Yeah. I was going to say, once January, February hit, it'd be a great time. But anyway, like I said, you're sticking with your 2 guys here, taking a little bit of a risk. Are you good with that decision?
I think they'll bring in somebody who has developmental potential in the practice squad, and it very well could be DiNucci, but I'm fine with them only going with 2. They can call up somebody on a practice squad. I mean, the way Sean Payton talked about it today in the press conference, he was pretty dismissive about the injuries piling up, as we saw with the that Philly versus San Francisco game. So I do think they're only going to keep 2. They're going to add at least 1 to the practice squad, somebody to get the reps out there and everything, and somebody with some developmental potential. It could even be Ben DiNucci still back on the practice squad, but I think I'm fine with that decision. I mean, when I was doing my final roster, I was only fitting in 2 because I didn't think it was like that much of a benefit to get that, 47 instead of 46 active players or whatever the number is. So I only went with 2. I'm fine with the decision. They should be looking for a quarterback, and if there's somebody they love, then make an exception for it. But I'm talking about somebody who you think can develop into a potential starter down the line, not a, hey, we're going to have Brett Rippon on the roster because I don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah. Is there, I don't know if you've seen all the different quarterbacks that have been cut. Is there one of them out there that you're looking at going, I wouldn't mind seeing that guy get a little bit developed?
I have not been able to had a chance to look through all the waiver wire releases yet. I mean, I guess Bailey Zappi is interesting. The thing is, there's other positions I'd have higher on the waiver wire. And if I'm talking about a young developmental quarterback, it's probably a waiver wire discussion versus an outright release and sign kind of thing. So we'll see. I'd be excited if they did bring in somebody, it's Davis Webb, right? Would have that choice there and work with them out there at the quarterback spot. But I'm not super concerned about it right now, especially with how deep the 2024 draft class looks at quarterback and how Jarrett Stidham looked down the stretch. I'm not super worried about it right now. They'll be able to find somebody, bring them on the practice squad, and break glass in case of emergency at that position. Now we don't have Kendall Hinton also, so maybe I should be concerned, but we'll see what happens.
Let me ask you about one guy,
okay.
Jordan Ta'amu. Did you like him coming out in the draft?
He was okay. He was surrounded with crazy weapons at Ole Miss. Just to kind of refresh everybody's memory, he was throwing to a pass catching trio of DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, and Dawson Knox, all on the same team, all on the same season. Jordan Ta'amu on that Phil Luongo offense, just kind of tossing it up to, literal NFL starters there playing in the SEC. So maybe as a practice squad guy, but not enough to be, I'm cutting a wide receiver I like more, or cutting line for a waiver of a wide receiver I like more, or something like that. I mean, he had cheat code weaponry for Ole Miss that season.
Okay, well, he just won the Offensive Player of the Year in the XFL.
Okay.
So just throwing that out there. And I did want to get to this question by Carla McDonald, because I think this is important to know, because this term put before a player's name or after their name, very important to know. She asks, what is the difference between cut and waived? Do you want to explain that to him?
Yes. So I think cut actually is both of them. The cut works for either, but it's the difference between released and waived, if we're going to be really specific on it, because cut is just like you're slashed from the roster, and that could be being released or waived. Being released is a player who is a vested veteran, so they have occurred 3 years of servitude in the NFL. I believe it is 3 years. So that would be one where like Quinn Bailey, Marquez Callaway, Mike Purcell, they've been in the league for, I believe it's 3 years, not 4 years. And therefore they go immediately to free agency, they can kind of pick where they go. Tyler Lancaster, he was released, and now he's free agency, and his agent and him can talk to any team. Where if you don't have 3 accrued seasons, so entering year 4 of accrued seasons in the league, then you are waived. And an easy way to think of that is a waived player goes to the waiver wire. So that means that every single team in the league has a chance to pick you up off the waiver wire for the contract that you are currently signed for. So you're looking at young players with less than 4 years of experience in the league, 3 accrued seasons. It's a hard word to pronounce. That'll go through waivers. Those are kind of the younger players that we'll be seeing. And the Broncos will certainly be putting in some claims here over the next 24, 48 hours on players to add to the roster. So there's a difference. I mean, even the greats out there make mistakes sometimes. I saw that I'm pretty sure he's incorrect on this one. Mike Kliss said that the Broncos waived Will Fuller, the center, and I'm like, he has 5 seasons in there. I think that's a release, not a waive. So that's my understanding. It's complicated. I'm sure there's some small details in there that I messed up, but that's that's the way I would look at it.
And we got Tom coming back again with another super chat, giving his thoughts on maybe bringing in a quarterback for the practice squad, saying Will Grier or that wide receiver quarterback combo from the Pats. That is Cunningham, if we're looking for a name, Malik Cunningham.
Yeah,
and I was a little bit surprised he was cut because he had pretty good preseason. Obviously shows he's a very raw player, but very athletic, which fits kind of the theme of where the NFL is going with that quarterback position. Of those two, I'd probably lean towards Cunningham because if nothing else, I mean, Sean Payton has shown he does like sometimes those gadget quarterbacks, even to be on the roster, just so teams have to prepare for those kind of plays. You know, we saw it with Taysom Hill. Even if you get him in there for only 10 plays a game, teams have to prepare for that. What is this guy going to do? You know, what kind of plays are they going to try to run with this athletic freak? So that's why I'd probably lean that way compared to Will Grier. I think he's pretty limited as a quarterback. And I just have a hard time seeing him have a path to becoming a quality player in the NFL.
You're talking about practice squad, though. If you're just talking about practice squad, I'd have no issue with that. Grier at least would come immediately to the practice squad versus having to use your waiver wire to get Malik Cunningham. So I'm not too worried about it. I'd be just as happy if Ben DiNucci is back on the practice squad. I think the big thing is that I feel very comfortable with Jarrett Stidham as the backup quarterback right now. So the third quarterback, I don't think you're going to find somebody probably that's going to end up being a quality starter at this point. You never know. There's improbable things that happen. I mean, you know, Kurt Warner story, Tom Brady, everybody knows those. But we'll see. They'll bring in another quarterback, though, on the practice squad, and we'll be able to break them down then. And I trust Sean Payton to make a good move. Maybe not great. I mean, they paid Taysom Hill that big contract, you know, drafting Ian Book, stuff like that. It's not always, you know, sunshine and roses with the quarterback decision. But who was it? Garrett Grayson, the Colorado State legend, also they got him in the 3rd round. Not so great. But yeah, we'll see what happens there with the Broncos at quarterback. Phil McLaughlin coming in with the super chat, superstars. Thank you so much, Phil, saying congrats to you and your wife, Nick. Will we pick up another quarterback? Yes, the Broncos will pick up another quarterback. We do not know if they will be on the active roster, though. I'd be pretty shocked given what we heard from Sean Payton if the Broncos had another quarterback active on the roster. But we'll see. Dr. Van Nostrand said 4 or more seasons. See, I thought maybe they were entering their 4th season. Maybe it is. They've had 4 total seasons. I'd have to look it up. It was 3 or 4. I'm off, potentially off on that number, but appreciate that coming in here. And yeah, we're looking at the roster here. So I guess final rundown of who we got left here. Wilson and Sternad at quarterback, Williams, P. Ryan, and McLaughlin at running back. Burton still here at fullback. At wide receiver, only 4 right now. Judy, Sutton, Mims, and Johnson. Tight end, we got 4 with Troutman, Dulcich, Manhurts, and Atkins. Offensive line, Broncos still got Garrett Bowles, McGlinchey, Fleming. In the interior, you have Powers, Miners, and Forsyth still makes it. Good for him. Wattenberg, Cushenberry. On the defensive side of the ball, you got Jones, Allen, Harris, Henningsen, and Garcia. Another undrafted free agent, Garcia. Good for him. We'll see if he's still around in the next 72 hours. Edge, they kept 5. Gregory, Clark, Cooper, Benito, Incum. Inside linebacker, you got Jewel, Singleton, Sanders, Trinad, and then really heavy at defensive back. Surtain, Mathis, Moss, McMillan, Bassey, Smith, and at safety, Simmons, Stearns, Jackson, Turner, Yell, and Skinner, and then the specialists being Lutz, Dixon, and Fabroni. And that's your Broncos players on the roster right now, besides Baron Browning, who is on the PUP list, who can be activated after week 4. We'll see what happens with him. But that's who it is right now. Any final thoughts or things that stand out to you on this list before we get on out, and any predictions over what could happen in the next 24 hours?
So I got one more question for you.
Okay.
And the Broncos decided to keep 4 undrafted players,
Okay.
which is honestly kind of pretty unheard of.
That's a lot.
Usually 1, maybe 2, but to keep 4, is that indicative of those guys just showed up well and the Broncos got really lucky getting these 4 guys? Or is it just kind of a showing of this is how depleted this roster was of talent?
I think it's a little bit of column A and column B. And I also think it's Sean Payton and a new regime coming in here, being able to get guys that they had their feelers on beforehand, not previous regime players, but their own regime. So that leaves a little bit more of an open door to undrafted free agent players. So you have, Jaleel McLaughlin, Elijah Garcia, Thomas Incoom, and who's the last one there? It's escaping me right now. Nate Adkins there. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they really liked even before training camp started a lot of those guys. I mean, they talked really highly about McLaughlin, paid Incoom really highly, and God, they went on for a bit about Nate Adkins. So that's not all too surprising for me, given those guys making it. And we saw what Garcia did in preseason as well. So I think it speaks a little bit to both right now. It does make you a little concerned about the depth, but proof will be in the pudding. Are these guys active? What do they do what do they do with it when they get a chance? And very much guys that were on the bubble. Maybe a few of these guys also don't stick around. Maybe they're ones that they are subjected to the second line of waiver wires coming up here pretty soon. As Peyton said, they're going to be churning rosters here, and a lot of these last guys should not feel comfortable. And he said that multiple times on interviews over the last 2 weeks, talking about getting down to the 53. So we'll see.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think it is a little bit of both. I do think like McLaughlin beating out a couple of veteran kind of guys. Like they weren't veterans, but at least had been in the league last year, had been on this roster at one point or on another NFL roster. I think that's showing just the talent that he brings. There's a story that came out today of the coaches would get there at 6 a.m. and they look out their windows at the field, and here's McLaughlin going and running stairs. Like he beat the coaches to the stadium for practice. And I think that just shows like this guy wants it. He's got the talent. He showed it in college, obviously being the highest rushing total ever of a career for a running back. Now, obviously it was at Youngstown, but still, like you can't completely discount that. A guy of his size to go and run for over 8,000 yards in college, pretty darn impressive.
Yeah.
Adkins, again, beat out a veteran. As much as we want to say, oh yeah, Alex Palczewski,
because Garcia it was not Garcia. Excuse me for that. Palczewski was 3 on offense. Yes.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
I think he's shown pretty darn well. Like if we're talking about who's been one of the most consistent offensive linemen in all of preseason, Palczewski's got to be up there on that list. This last game he had a little bit of struggle once he dislocated his finger, and it sounds like he is going to go to short-term IR because of it. But still, like I feel pretty good about the talent that he could actually be something. And we got Phil McLaughlin coming in asking that question of what position do we go with the 5th pick? Because we do have the 5th pick in the waiver wire. I think you nailed it earlier. Wide receiver seems very high on that list. Defensive line is another spot. I could see the Broncos looking pretty hard. Linebacker, I think those are the 3 main ones that I would probably say good chance the Broncos try to find somebody.
Yeah, and just like in the draft, while they're looking for certain positions, they're probably scouring most of these guys who come through, going through their notes, and it's more about the individuals who were released versus the actual position. Like if there's let's say edge rusher that they absolutely loved and had a very high grade on, and they thought he was good in preseason and hit the waiver wire, even though they might feel good with their spot right now, they might bring in another guy still. So I would not be too shocked at all. If you're talking positions, though, I think wide receiver is the one. It just makes the most sense for where they're at. Who could be the best wide receiver on the market? I would have to go through and see who was waived to go through that list. That's what they're doing right now. And instead, I've been trying to catch up on all the moves that have happened and get ready to talk with you guys. So that would be maybe tomorrow morning we can talk about that as well, or do a Wednesday night show. But they're definitely looking for wide receiver. We got Perry West coming in, I think, for a third time today with $1.60. Thank you so much. He says 16 tight ends of 500 yards. Kelsey, Hawkinson, Andrews, Ingram, Kittle, Freiermuth, Goddard, Njoku, Higbee, Schultz, Everett, Conklin. That's shocking. Cole Kmet, Dawson Knox, Hunter Henry, and Johnson. Yeah,
okay, so it's a few more tight ends than I thought. Now, I kind of wonder how many were closer to the 500-yard mark compared to getting closer to the 1,000-yard mark. But again, when you're looking at trading a guy like Albert Okwuegbunam, who, like I said, athletic freak, if he could put it all together, maybe he could be one of those like 500 yards right around that area tight end. Mm-hmm. But he's shown so far in 3 years and most of a training camp in his 4th year, he hasn't been that guy. Like it just has not clicked for him. And there's been a ton of players that have come through that have been athletic freaks, that have tested well, who look good in college, who just can't make that transition to the NFL. And, maybe it is. Maybe he has finally clicked and he's good to go. And maybe Broncos just made a huge mistake. Right now, I'm going to lean to saying that they didn't. But I've been wrong more times than I can count. So it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, I know, exactly. I run out of fingers at some point. But yeah, I think he's gone to a good place. I think that he's going to have some opportunities there within that system. He's going to have some nice matchups that maybe he wouldn't have had here in Denver. I think there's a lot of good things for both sides. I think this could be a win-win. He goes where he could probably shine, where with the Broncos, he probably would have been buried on the depth chart if he did stay here. It probably would have been one of those, like, are you going to put Dulcich on the field or are you going to put him? Because if it's a receiving situation, I'm probably leaning towards Dulcich because he's proven it more so far. Even though he's only been in the league for 1 year, he's proven that he can be a quality player out there as a receiver. So, like I said, I think it could end up being a win-win for both sides. All right. Did I lose you there, Nick? Nope, he might be frozen on me. So we'll kind of keep wrapping things up here. If you got any last-second questions, you can get them in here. But right now, like I said, I think we're kind of getting to the end of this. And, I think the Broncos expect a lot to still happen. Plenty of moves that they can make. Like I said, being 5th on the waiver wire. And it sounds like Sean Payton is not satisfied with where this roster is at. But guys, make sure that you guys are following us on Twitter. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH. You can find Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And also make sure you guys are heading over to Mile High Huddle on Twitter. You can guys follow the pods as well, just to know when these shows are going live. Get on Facebook. If you're around on Facebook, look it up. And I know some of you are already on Facebook. You got YouTube as well. Make sure you guys are also going on YouTube and subscribing, liking, and sharing. And there's plenty of other things you guys can do to help with the show. And here's Nick. I was just kind of wrapping things up here for you.
Internet's crapping out on me a little bit here, if you're still there for me, Carl. But wrapping on up, and I'll be here and sitting pretty.
Okay. But anyway, like I said, thank you guys for tuning in here tonight. Great show with all of you. Appreciate all the support from all of our stars and super chats. I can't remember exactly all who was a part of that, but again, just thank you guys. I know Perry West came in quite a few times. Phil McLaughlin, Tom came in, 3 or 4 times as well. Tim Durr, came in. I'm sorry if I'm missing Michael Ronquillo, always coming in. Paul, I'm just trying to get back through the chat here. We got Woofy coming in. I'm glad you got to listen in here live with us today. And we got Joey. Good to see him. Always fun to listen to his show as well. If you guys ever get a chance, head on over there. Timmy Shields coming in. Excited for your grandson. I'm getting to watch games with my son and my daughter right now. I'm just excited for that they're halfway paying attention. Cody W. and Lawrence Rivera. And I'm sorry if I miss any of you guys that came in with any super chats. Again, I'm just trying to go back through all the chat. You guys were very talkative today, which is a great thing, and lots going on for the Broncos. And, be paying attention because, like I said, this is not done. This is not going to be your 53-man roster that goes into the season. Naj as well. Thank you again for that 1999 super chat. And David McElrath, good to see you in here. Again, just very sorry for your family and all that you're going through. Make sure you reach out if you need anything. I promise we're all here for you. We love that you're in here every night with us. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in for another episode of, Troy, wanted to get him as well. Troy Bohr coming in with the super chat early on for us. So anyway, thank you guys again for tuning in. Thank you for always being here every Tuesday with us and with all of our different shows that we have going on. And as Nick always says, make sure you guys are choosing kindness, choosing compassion, and we'll hopefully have a great couple weeks here heading into the season where we get to see the Broncos be 1-0 and make sure that those Raiders go crying back home. Anyway, thank you guys again, and we'll see you next week.